Hey, happy Wednesday morning, everyone. Welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. Are you ready for Thanksgiving tomorrow? Well, I just want to wish you a very, very happy Thanksgiving. I hope you have a fantastic weekend. I hope you're able to get together with your loved ones, with your family, and have an extremely enjoyable time here at this time of the year. Let's not forget that every single day we need to be giving thanks and praise to God for His unspeakable gift of His Son, Jesus Christ. The great sacrifice that the Father and the Son made in order for you and for me to have eternal life. It's just, it's absolutely incredible to contemplate. And we're talking about that life, that eternal life, as we are continuing our investigation of Romans 5 through 8, as it parallels 1 Corinthians chapter 15. We're focused on the fact that Paul said that the resurrection would be when sin, the sting of death, would be overcome. To deal with sin is to deal with death. Now, I want you to notice, and in the last video I spent a good little bit of time talking about these related issues. I want to go back and notice again where Paul urged the Romans, present yourselves to God as being alive from the dead, and your members as instruments of righteousness to God. For sin shall not have dominion over you, for you are not under law, but under grace. Now watch. What then? Shall we sin because we are not under law, but under grace? God forbid. Look, those who say that because God has dealt with sin, that gives us license to do whatever we want to do, are flying directly in the face of Paul. Go back and read Romans 6, 1 and 2. Shall we sin that grace may abound? God forbid. Grace is not a license to sin. Grace is the impetus for righteousness. Anyway, to continue, notice what he continues to say. Do you not know that to whom you yield yourselves servants to obey, his servant you are? You are that one slaves whom you obey, now watch this, whether of sin leading to death or to obedience leading to righteousness. Now, I just want to introduce one more time the question. Is Paul talking here about biological death? If you yield yourselves to sin, that leads to death. Listen to me, please, very carefully. We are going to die physically, whether we are in Christ or whether we're outside of Christ. We are going to die biologically, whether we have yielded ourselves to righteousness and lived a life of holiness to the very best of our ability, or whether we have been the most lecherous, immoral, corrupt, dishonest individual on the earth. Biological death is a certainty. It doesn't matter what kind of life we live. Thus, when Paul says, yield your members as instruments to righteousness and to life, but if you yield your members as servants to sin, that leads to death. And we must, boy, this is important. We must keep in mind that, as I have pointed out several times, that Paul in 1 Corinthians 15 is reiterating the story of Genesis, the story of Eden, the story of Adam and sin and death. Of every fruit of every tree that is in the garden you may freely eat, but of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you will not eat thereof, because in the day you eat you will surely die. Well, guess what? That's the story of 1 Corinthians 15. That's the story of Romans 6. If you yield yourselves as your members as instruments to sin, it leads to death. Now, watch this incredible reality. Paul is recapitulating the story of Eden. In Romans 6, I'm skipping down for time considerations here. Romans 6:21, verse 20, excuse me. When you were slaves of sin, you were free in regard to righteousness. What fruit did you have then in those things of which you are now ashamed? For the end of those things is death. Do you see that Paul is retelling the story of the garden? Here's Adam and Eve. There's the fruit. They ate of it and they were ashamed. And they died. Here is Paul saying, when you were living lives of unholiness apart from God, what was the fruit of that? You're now ashamed of those things, and the result was death. Adam, sin, shame, death. Paul, sin, shame, death. But you see, when they had sinned, they had died, but they had not died biologically. Now, if it's the case that Paul is recapitulating the story of the garden in Romans 6:21 and following, if it is the case that recapitulation is sin, shame, death, just like it was in the garden, then since it is the case that in Romans chapter 6, Paul has nothing whatsoever to do about biological death, then guess what? That means that the death that Adam and Eve experienced the day they sinned was not biological death. They sinned, they were ashamed, they died. Paul said, you sinned, you're ashamed, you had died. This is the story of the garden. The garden recapitulated. But let me reiterate, since Paul is not and cannot be discussing biological death, then it follows that the death of the garden was not biological death. It was alienation from God, spiritual death. Wow. Now, when we come back on Monday, we're going to be talking about Romans 6:23, the wages of sin is death. What an incredible passage that is tremendously abused and misunderstood. Once again, hope you have an absolutely fantastic Thanksgiving holiday. Please be safe. Give thanks to the Lord for His unspeakable gift of His Son, Jesus Christ. Lord willing, we'll see you on Monday.